If you've ever heard stories about girls falling in love with billionaires in disguise, well, my story is the opposite. I fell in love with a billionaire, but I spent months believing I was dating a broke, unemployed man. My name is Tham Mong. I was 24 that year, working as a contract secretary for a small company. Life wasn't glamorous, but I held on to my dignity and my belief in real love. I used to think, if two people truly loved each other, money wouldn't matter. That was before I met him, a man who claimed to be jobless, bankrupt, and temporarily living off a relative's charity. The blind date was arranged by my older sister, Tham Mong. She always said she was helping me find a husband, but deep down, I knew she just wanted me out of the way. She once told me, flat out, "You've got no beauty, no money. If you're still picky about poor guys, you'll die alone." So, I didn't expect anything from that meeting. Especially when she added, half laughing, half mocking, "This one's broke. Let's see how long your standards hold up." I showed up at the cafe in an old dress I wore to work, no makeup, just my hair and a simple tie. And there he was, Phu Tu Hao. Worn-out shoes, faded shirt, a tired look on his face, but his eyes, they were honest. Deep, and warm in a way that made you forget everything else. We talked for hours, not about yachts or private villas, but about failure. He told me how he got laid off, how he was now cleaning out storage rooms for his uncle just to make ends meet. I told him about the time I was fired because I refused to entertain a client the way my boss wanted me to. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to impress anyone. I was just me. And he was just real. On the walk home, it started to rain. Out of nowhere. He took off his coat and placed it over my shoulders. Then he looked at me, quiet and serious, and said, "If you don't mind falling for a man with nothing right now, would you give me a chance?" I didn't answer right away. But when I got home, I realized, I had been smiling all afternoon. After that day, we started seeing each other more often. Not at fancy restaurants or luxurious places, he took me to eat noodle soup from street vendors. We walked in the park, sometimes sat on public benches with nothing but a cup of warm soy milk between us. And I liked it. It was quiet. Honest. Something in his presence made me feel safe, like I wasn't being judged or measured. With him, I didn't need to pretend to be strong. I could be the real me. One night, as we sat under a flickering streetlight, I asked him, "Why haven't you tried to start over? You're smart. You could do anything." He paused, looked at his hands, then said with a bitter smile, "Sometimes, people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they're tired of people only loving them when they're successful." I didn't understand it then, not fully. But those words stayed with me. I never asked about his past. I didn't dig into what company he said he lost, or why his uncle never showed up. Maybe part of me was afraid. Or maybe I trusted him more than I wanted to admit. But trust, that's what would be tested soon enough. It began with my sister, Tham Mong. She had always looked down on me, but now, she took it to another level. She found out about Tu Hao, not that he was a billionaire, of course, but that he was unemployed and living off family. And to her, that was enough. She invited me over for dinner one evening, acting sweet and fake as ever, and when I brought him with me, she looked him up and down like he was some street dog I'd dragged in. "Oh," she said loudly, in front of everyone, "so this is the man you've been seeing? I thought you said he worked in finance." "He does," I replied calmly. "Just not at the moment." "And does he plan to ever not be a leech?" Tu Hao didn't flinch. He just smiled politely and said, "I suppose we all start from somewhere, don't we, Miss Tham?" Her husband, True Bang, joined in too. He was worse, smug, arrogant, and always looking for a reason to step on people. He leaned in, grinning, and said, "You know, Mong why, San Nu's right to worry. Marrying a man with no assets? What kind of future do you think you'll have?" I stared at him, then at my sister, and I said softly, "I'd rather marry a man with nothing and a good heart, than marry someone like you, with everything, but nothing decent left inside." We left early that night. On the way home, Tu Hao was silent. But I could feel something shift in him, like he was holding something back. I reached out, took his hand, and whispered, "Don't let them get to you. I know who you are. And I believe in you." He looked at me. There was something in his eyes, pain, and something else, gratitude. Love? That night, as we stood in front of my apartment, he kissed my forehead and said, "No one's ever defended me like that before." If only I had known then, how much he was hiding. How dangerous the truth really was. And how far my sister and her husband would go to destroy everything we had. The first sign that something wasn't right came just a week later. I was on my way home from work when a black car followed me for 3 blocks. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. But when I stopped at the convenience store and stepped back out, they were still there. Same tinted windows. Same slow crawl. I hurried home, locked my door, and didn't sleep a wink that night. I didn't tell Tu Hao. I didn't want to worry him. Or maybe I didn't want to seem paranoid. But something in my gut kept nagging me. Something told me it wasn't random. And I was right. A few days later, I overheard my sister on the phone while visiting my parents. She was in the garden, speaking in a low, sharp voice. "She doesn't suspect a thing. Keep following them. I want every detail. Especially that man. I want to know if he's lying about being broke. No one disappears from the finance world without a trace unless they're hiding something." I froze behind the hedge. My heart pounded in my ears. She was spying on us. But why? What did she want to uncover? That night, I confronted her. "Why are you having someone follow us?" She raised an eyebrow, not even bothering to deny it. "Because I care about you, dear sister. Because I think you're being foolish. You fall for some broke loser with no background, and you expect me to clap and smile? I'm protecting you." "No," I said through clenched teeth. "You're trying to control me." She smiled then, a wicked little smile I'd never noticed before. "You're so naive, Mong. Why? You always were." That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told Tu Hao everything. The tailing car. The phone call. My sister's obsession with digging into his life. He didn't look shocked. If anything, he looked tired. Like he had expected this. He took my hand and said quietly, "There's something you need to know. I haven't been entirely honest with you." My heart stopped. For a second, I felt cold all over. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then whispered, "My company didn't go bankrupt." I stepped away from it. I needed to. I needed to see who would stay with me, if I had nothing. I didn't speak. I just stared at him. I didn't mean to lie. I've been used before, Mong. Why? Used for my name, my wealth, my power. And when I met you, you didn't ask for anything. You looked at me like a person, not a paycheck. Tears welled up in my eyes. Not from betrayal. But from something deeper, relief. That the man I loved hadn't lied out of malice, but fear. Fear of being unloved for who he truly was. I reached out, held his face between my palms, and said, "I didn't fall in love with your money. I fell in love with you. The way you held the umbrella over my head that day in the rain. The way you listened. The way you saw me when no one else did." He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time, I felt like everything was going to be okay. But I was wrong. Because the moment his true identity surfaced, the storm began. The secret didn't stay hidden for long. Just 2 days after that night, headlines exploded all over the internet. Phu Tu Hao, CEO of Hao Vin Group, spotted with mysterious woman during hiatus. Photos of us walking hand in hand down the street, of him gently tying my shoelaces, even one of us hugging outside my apartment, all of it plastered online. It felt like the world turned upside down in an instant. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters camped outside my apartment building. My inbox was flooded with questions I couldn't answer. But what hurt the most wasn't the attention. It was my sister. She didn't even pretend anymore. She barged into my apartment with True Bang behind her, threw a magazine on my table, and hissed, "So it's true. All this time, you were hiding this from me. You knew he was rich and just pretended to be innocent." "I didn't know," I said, voice trembling. "Not at first." "But you knew eventually," she snapped. "And you still kept it quiet. You think you're better than me now? Is that it?" "This was never a competition," I whispered. She laughed bitterly. "It was always a competition, Mong. Why? You were the plain, boring one. You were supposed to stay in your little corner while I ruled the spotlight. But now, you've taken the one thing I never could. You made him love you." I didn't know what to say. I had never seen this side of her, this jealous, burning rage. But it only got worse. That same week, Tu Hao's company became the target of a corporate attack. Confidential files leaked. A business partner pulled out last minute from a multi-million-dollar deal. There were rumors of embezzlement. Legal threats. The stock price plummeted within days. He was being sabotaged. We both knew who was behind it. True Bang had influence in finance, and with my sister's access to personal details, it wasn't hard for them to orchestrate an attack. I begged Tu Hao to let me help, to go public with the truth. But he refused. "I can take the fall," he said quietly, holding me close. "But I won't let them drag you into this mess." "They already have," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Then came the night someone broke into his condo. I still remember the sound of glass shattering as we slept. I woke to Tu Hao pulling me down onto the floor, shielding me with his body. We didn't know if it was a robbery or something worse. He was bleeding, his arm grazed by a broken shard. But when the police arrived, there was no sign of theft. Nothing missing. Just a message scrawled on the mirror in red. "Leave her. Or lose everything." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was war. He looked at me that night, pain etched across his face, and said the words that shattered me. "Mong, why, maybe it's better if I disappear." "No," I said, choking on the word. "Don't you dare. Don't you leave me like everyone else." He dropped to his knees in front of me, voice breaking. "I can't protect you. Every minute you're with me, you're in danger." "I don't care," I cried. "Love isn't love if it runs at the first sign of pain. If we're going down, then we go down together." He didn't say another word. He just held me, tight, desperate, like letting go would kill him. And in that moment, we both knew, we were in too deep. But neither of us was willing to turn back. Not now. Not ever. After that night, something shifted in us. We stopped running. Stopped hiding. Tu Hao went back to the boardroom, not as a man pretending to be poor, but as the rightful CEO, reclaiming his throne with blood in his veins and fire in his eyes. And I was right there with him. I sat in on meetings, handed him files, stood beside him at press conferences when they questioned everything, from our relationship to his competence. I became the woman the media couldn't stop talking about. The mystery girl. The secretary turned lover. Some called me lucky. Others called me a gold digger. But no one saw the nights I held him when he shook from the pressure, or the mornings I cleaned blood off his arm from the glass that almost killed him. One night, after a particularly brutal meeting, I found him standing alone in the dark office, looking out over the city skyline. "They think I'm weak," he murmured. "No," I said, walking toward him. "They're just afraid of what you'll become when you rise again." He turned around slowly, reached into his desk, and handed me an envelope. Inside was a folder, evidence. Phone records. Transactions. Surveillance photos. My sister's name. Her husband's. Proof of everything. How they hired the hacker. How they paid off one of the board members. How they planted fake evidence to frame Tu Hao for fraud. I felt sick. "You've had this all along?" I asked. He nodded. But if I used it, your sister would go to prison. And it would break your family apart. I stared at the papers, then up at him. What are you going to do? He exhaled. That depends on you. It took me 2 days to decide. 2 days of silence. Of pacing back and forth. Of crying into my pillow, remembering how San Nu used to braid my hair, how she used to sing to me when I was sick. But in the end, I remembered something stronger, the way she looked at me that night, like I was dirt. Like I was never meant to be loved. I gave him the answer, do what you have to do. But let me be the one to face them. So I did. I showed up at their home, uninvited, and laid the folder on their dining table. San Nu looked at me like I was insane. What is this? Proof, I said. Of everything you did. The break-in. The fake accusations. The attack on his company. She turned pale. True Bang tried to play it cool. You think a couple of papers can scare us? No, I said, calm and clear. But the legal system can. Unless, you both step away. From his business. From me. Forever. It was quiet. For a long, breathless minute. Then she stood up, eyes shaking. You do this to your own blood? You stopped being my sister the day you tried to destroy the one person who's ever truly loved me. That was the last time I saw her. The silence afterward felt like breathing for the first time. And then, came the proposal. It wasn't grand. No cameras. No fireworks. Just us, on the rooftop of his office building, the sun setting behind him. He knelt down with a ring in his hand and tears in his eyes. I was born with wealth, he said, but I found my worth the day I met you. Will you marry me, Mong Wai? I didn't even speak. I just threw my arms around him and whispered, yes. We got married a month later. A quiet ceremony turned into a celebration beyond anything I ever imagined. His staff. My coworkers. Strangers who had followed our journey online. And somewhere, in the front row, my parents, quiet, emotional, proud. He carried me in his arms across the stage while the crowd cheered. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't someone's shadow. I was someone's everything. 1 year later, everything had changed. I wasn't just Tham Mong Wai, the plain secretary. I was Mong Wai, the woman who stood beside a man through storms, and helped rebuild an empire. But more than that, I was a wife. And soon, a mother. We moved into a quiet villa on the outskirts of the city, away from the chaos. Every morning, Tu Hao would kiss my forehead before work, place a gentle hand on my belly, and whisper to our unborn child, Dad's going to build you a world where you never have to doubt love. I still worked, though less than before. Not because he asked me to stop, but because I chose to rest. To savor things I never had time for, like warm breakfasts, afternoon walks, late-night talks under the stars. Sometimes, I'd wake in the middle of the night and watch him sleep, this man who once pretended to be broke, not to trick me, but to find someone who could love him without gold. And I remembered the rainy street. The cheap coat he wrapped around me. The boyish nervousness in his voice when he asked for a chance. If I had said no that day, if I had let my sister's poison sink into my heart, none of this would have happened. There were moments when the world still doubted us. People who whispered behind our backs, who said I was lucky. And maybe I was. But not for the reasons they thought. I wasn't lucky because I married a billionaire. I was lucky because I found someone who saw me, not my past, not my bank account, not my scars, but me. The girl who still cried during sad movies. Who still checked her old journals and counted every blessing with a shaky smile. And one evening, as the sun painted golden streaks across our garden, Tu Hao came home early with flowers in one hand and a tiny stuffed lion in the other. For our lion-hearted little girl, he said, placing the toy in my hands. I laughed. You're that sure it's a girl? I'm sure, he said, pulling me close. She'll have your eyes. And your fire. I laid my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I never thought I'd end up here," I whispered. "With all of this." He kissed the top of my head. "And I never thought anyone would ever love me without knowing who I really was." And then he said the words I'll carry with me forever. "Turns out, the richest thing I ever owned was your heart."